Right, okay. You lot, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can catch all of our videos. And if you're really interested in the Krays, join our private Facebook group, Krays Crime Lords of London. You'll find over 1,000 videos and thousands of images. We're moderated and friendly. Come and give us a try.
When we were 12, the war ended. We started back at school at Daniel Street, and to earn a bit of money, we used to help our grandfather, Jimmy Kray, on his old clothes stall in Brick Lane, and we used to keep an eye on his cash box while he was selling the clothes. And when we were 12, we had our first trouble with the law, or Reg did anyway. We had been with some friends to Chingford in Essex for a picnic. On the way back on the train, Reg fired a few shots from his slug gun out of the window. A slug gun is similar to an air pistol. He wasn't trying to hit anybody, but the guard stopped the train and locked Reg in his cabin. When we got back to London, the transport police were waiting. They made something out of nothing and even took Reg to court. They treated him like a hardened criminal. He got off with a warning after Reverend Father Hetherington spoke up for him. Reverend Hetherington was a man we had respect for. He ran a youth club in the Bethnal Green Road, which we joined. He was a tall and powerful man, and he knew how to deal with East End kids. He even had us running errands for him. Sometimes we went to his church, and I remember he had such a clear and powerful voice. He was a good friend to us over many years, and he spoke as a character witness for us more than once. He also presided at our mother's funeral. The boxing started when we were about 12. Our mother let us have a room at Valence Road, which we turned into a small gym, and our older brother Charlie started to teach us some boxing techniques. Charlie was in the Navy by now, and he was quite a good boxer. He let us have a Navy kit bag, which we stuffed full of rags and old clothes and used as a punch ball. It was suspended from the ceiling by a hook and held down by a meat hook in the floorboards. One night, our father crept into the room after he'd had a few drinks, and the meat hook went straight through his foot. He was in agony, but we all had a good laugh. A lot of the local kids used our homemade gym, including a kid called Kenny Lynch, who later made his name as a singer and entertainer, and the Gill brothers, the Nicholson brothers, and Charlie Page, who all became pro fighters. Most people know the story of how me and Reg sort of made our professional debut. A travelling fair came to Bethnal Green in Turin Street. The big attraction for us was the Alf Stewart boxing booth, where £1 was offered to any man who could go 3 rounds with one of the fighters on the booth. It wasn't easy because the fighters they had, Buster and Steve Osborne, Les Haycox and Slasher Warner, could all handle themselves. On the opening night, there weren't many takers, so Alf Stewart said he would pay any spectators who would get in the ring and fight each other. Me and Reg shouted out that we would fight, and we did. We had a good scrap for 3 rounds. Reg's face was bruised and my nose was bleeding, but the crowd enjoyed it. And Alf Stewart gave us 7 shillings and 6pence, about 35 pence in today's currency, which was a lot of money then. That was something else the film got wrong. In the film, they tell me our grandfather, John Lee, is seen in the ring in the boxing booth, and he's getting a pasting, which is why me and Reg wanted to fight. And that never happened. Our grandfather didn't fight at the boxing booth. But another fighter, Charlie Sims, saw us and he thought we had some talent. He persuaded us to join the Robert Browning Boxing Club, and he became our trainer. By the time we were 15, in 1948, Reggie won the London Schoolboys Championship, was a Great Britain Schoolboys Championship finalist, South East Divisional Youth Club champion and London ATC champion. I won the Hackney Schoolboys Championship, a London Junior Championship and a London ATC title. We even got in the newspapers. One paper said the Kray twins could go on to become as famous as another pair of sporting twins, the cricketers Alec and Eric Bedser. It was at this time when we were 15 that I was in a film. I was in the famous Repton Boxing Club one night when another man who was there, a film director, said he needed extras for a film he was making at Ealing Studios. The film was called The Magic Box, starring Robert Donat, and me and a friend called Sean Venables were in it. So was the great boxer Jack Kid Berg, but I never spoke to him then. Many years later, he became a friend of ours and used to come to our clubs. We were very sad when he died in 1991. The Magic Box was shown by BBC Television in 1991, and a friend of mine saw it and recognised me, even though I was only on the screen for a few seconds. My friend took a photo of me in the film as he watched it on his TV set. I was pleased he still recognised me after all these years. By the time we were 16, me and Reg had our own gang. Most kids in the area belonged to gangs because it was such a tough area. We also carried weapons when we went to dances and so on, because if other gangs knew you were tooled up, you were less likely to get bother. I was given a gun at about this time, but I never used it. We used to keep our weapons hidden under the floorboards at Valence Road, and if we got wind that the police were coming to the house, we would move them to friends' houses. We got into a bit of bother after a fight outside a dance hall in Mare Street in Hackney. We were charged with grievous bodily harm against three men, Dennis Seigenberg, Walter Birch and Roy Harvey. Years later, in Parkhurst Prison, Reg met up with Seigenberg again. By then he'd changed his name to Dennis Stafford and he'd been convicted of murder. We were sent to the number 1 court at the Old Bailey in front of Judge McClure. The Reverend Hetherington spoke for us and we were acquitted through lack of evidence. At the end of the trial, the judge said to us, "Don't go around thinking you are the Sabini brothers." The Sabinis were well-known gangsters at the time, and later they became friends when one of the brothers, Johnny Sabini, used to visit me in Broadmoor. Our good relationship with the Reverend Hetherington carried on through the years. He was a fine man, and he gave us a lot of good advice. I remember he once told me that he never once saw an instance of a person who was dying who failed to turn to God. I had proof of this with my own Uncle Albert, my Auntie May's husband, who was one of the kindest, gentlest men I ever met. He too turned to God, and his last words to my auntie before he died were, "I am not a wicked man, am I, May?" Father Hetherington used to say to me, "You don't have to go to church, but you must believe in the Creator. You must find time to think about him." I think that is why many people in prisons and hospitals like Broadmoor turn to God. They have the time to think, to analyse their lives. I know, because it's happened to me. We had no more trouble with the police for another year. 1950, when we were 17, we were still doing our boxing and doing well. and we did some work, mainly in the markets. Shifting boxes around gave us a bit of money and helped to build our muscles. When the next trouble with the police came, it wasn't really our fault. I was standing with Reg and some friends outside a cafe in the Bethnal Green Road. A policeman told us to move along. Then he gave me a shove in the back. I hit him and we ran off. But the police came looking for us when they tried to arrest me. Reg became involved as well. We both got charged with assault. We were lucky. The Reverend Hetherington spoke up for us again, and we got probation. A few months later, we both turned professional as boxers. We weighed an identical 9 stones, 9 pounds. We were lightweights and we both did well. We won our first fights at the Mile End Arena. Reg beat Bob Manito from Clapham and I knocked out Bernie Long from Romford. In all, Reg had 7 fights as a pro and he won them all. I had 6 fights, won 4 and lost 2. Our older brother Charlie turned pro too, and he did well, winning 21 out of 25 fights. They used to call him Evergreen Charlie Kray, and he was a stylish fighter, and I've only ever seen him lose his temper once, and that was when he knocked out a fellow called Jimmy Cornell in the first club we owned called the Double R. Jimmy Cornell had a brother called George. I had to kill him later. I think we could have gone all the way as boxers, but then they called us up for the army. We were ordered to report to the Tower of London to join the Royal Fusiliers. We didn't want to go in the army, but we hoped they would let us be physical training instructors. They didn't, of course. The next 2 years were a waste of time. We spent them either escaping or locked up in the guardhouse. Once, when we were in the guard room at the tower, our father came to see us. He was still on the trot himself, so he had to come in disguise. Nobody recognised him. And I have some happy memories of my father. He was a good man when he wasn't in drink. Once, when I was a boy, he was going off to the bookmakers and he said to me, "Go on, Ron, choose a horse and I'll put a quid on it." I looked at the runners in his newspaper and I picked a horse called Gay Donald. It won at 33 to 1, so I'd won £33, which was a lot of money in them days. Once, when we were on the run, we borrowed a car and drove to Southend for the weekend with a friend of ours. We sent the commanding officer at the tower a postcard saying, "Wish you were here from Reg and Ron Kray." He had a sense of humour and he pinned the card to his office wall. Another time when we were on the run, the police arrested us and put us on an identification parade. They said they suspected us of attacking a man with a truncheon and stabbing him with a knife. We were not picked out on the parade, so the police handed us back to the army. Another time we were in a cafe in the Mile End Road when a policeman began to get aggressive. So I hit him and Reg got involved as well. We were sent before Thames magistrates and they gave us a month's jail for assaulting a policeman, and we were sent to Wormwood Scrubs at the end of that month on Good Friday 1953 when we were 19. They decided to send us to the army barracks at Canterbury in Kent to be court-martialed. We went down there by train, handcuffed to military policemen. When we got to Canterbury Barracks, we overpowered the guards and escaped. It was easy. We were arrested 24 hours later at Eltham in the suburbs of South London. They took us back to Canterbury, where we were later court-martialed and sent to the glass house at Shepton Mallet in the West Country. That's the place where they shot some of the film The Dirty Dozen. It was very hard there. . Among the people we met was Charlie Richardson, who later ran his own gang with his brother in South London. We gave as good as we got at Shepton Mallet. Once we smashed the guardhouse up, then we set fire to it. Finally, when we were 20, they let us out of the army. So we had no money and no jobs. Because of our records, we had no real chance now of making it in boxing, but we still had the pact we had made when we were young. If we couldn't make it as fighters, then we'd make it as villains. The first thing me and Reg did when they slung us out of the army was to go and see a friend of ours called Billy Jones. They called Billy the Fox, and he and a fella called Bobby Ramsey ran a club called Stragglers in Cambridge Circus in the West End. Billy said he'd give us a few quid to tide us over, and we'd do odd jobs in return. A bit of bouncing, that sort of thing. It was fine for a while, just while we sorted ourselves out, and we were grateful to Billy. He stayed a good friend of ours, and we were sorry when he died recently. But me and Reg wanted to better ourselves. We were only a couple of working class lads from the East End. We'd both been in bits of bother with the law, and we'd both been booted out of the army. I suppose you could call us undesirables. You could say we were going nowhere fast, but still we fancied ourselves. We were young, we were fit, and if we weren't exactly well educated, we were very streetwise. The turning point for us came when we heard about a billiard hall in the Mile End Road. It was known as a real trouble spot. There were a lot of fights there, and the place was always getting smashed up. We heard the lease was up for grabs, so we went and saw the man who owned it, Mr. Martin. He said to us, no one has been able to handle this place. What makes you two think you can do different? I said to him, if you let us have this place, if any fighting starts, we'll stop it. There'll be no more trouble and you'll get your money every week. He said, right, he'd try it. We were as good as our word. We smashed a few heads together and the fighting stopped, and Mr. Martin got his rent. We called it the Regal and turned it into a really nice place with 14 snooker tables and a bar. John Pearson, who wrote the first book about us, said the Regal was a rundown snooker hall with 2 tables. It wasn't. That was one of a lot of things about us he and other people got wrong. People have said that me and Reg were behind most of the trouble at the Regal, that we started a lot of the bother ourselves just so that we could get our hands on the lease. They even said that the fella who had the lease before us used to keep an Alsatian behind the bar to frighten off troublemakers, and that we used to chuck fireworks over the bar to drive the dog mad. None of it is true. We got the lease because Mr. Martin could see that we were just about the only fellas who could deal with all the trouble at his club. It was as simple as that. It wasn't easy, and it was at the Regal that we came face to face with the protection racket for the first time. Protection was rife in London at the time, and I expect it still is in towns and cities everywhere. The Chinese communities do it a lot. All it is, a gang will threaten to damage a property or a business unless the owner agrees to pay them money not to. Then, once the owner is paying money to the gang will make sure no other villains try to put any financial pressures on him. If they do, they will be sorted out. The club or business will be protected. Most people pay up to avoid trouble. I was serving drinks behind the bar one afternoon when a Maltese gang walked in. One of them came up to the bar, asked me if I was running the club, and said he wanted to talk about business. I asked him what he wanted. He said in future he'd be coming in every week to collect protection money. If we didn't pay it, he said the club could have a bit of trouble. And what sort of trouble, I asked. Oh, you know, a few smashed windows, maybe a petrol bomb, a fire, a few of the cloths on the tables ripped, a big fight, that sort of thing. I picked up a bayonet we kept behind the bar. I threw him across one of the billiard tables and I stuck that bayonet straight through his hand, pinned him to the table. It was him that needed protection then. There was now a right skirmish going on in the club, so I grabbed a Japanese sword we kept hung on the wall, took it down and chased the rest of the Maltese bastards out of the club. They all jumped into a Ford car, but they couldn't get it started. So I started to smash it up with the sword. I smashed up the roof and the bonnet and the windscreen. In the end, they were lucky. They managed to get the motor started and drive away. They were lucky because if they hadn't, I would have smashed them up as well. After that, we never had no more trouble with protection gangs. But like I always say, in our business, you have to meet fire with fire. We were like soldiers of the streets, defending our territory against the enemy. And that's all we ever did when it came to violence. We only ever fought with our own kind.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please join our Facebook group. It's called Krays Crime Lords of London. We're a friendly moderated group with over 1,000 Kray and other celebrated gangster videos available for view. There's also thousands of images in the photos sections. The link for the group is in the YouTube description section.